starting with the sienna brown to build up the main shadow that I have cast by the actual casing, by that silver leaf design that we have around the stone. And of course, all the little inclusions. And I'm working, I did this from a reference photo. This is the actual coloring that I'm holding in my hand, and it's very, very similar to the way that it actually appears on the photo that I found online that I was working from. The beauty of amber is that you can put an entire universe in there, and it's completely up to you what's going to be encased in the stone, what's going to be immortalized, and how. So first color was sienna brown. That's pretty straightforward. Pretty much every coloring pencil set has a sienna brown or something close to it. Basically, you want a nice middle brown to create this initial buildup of shadows and inclusions. And for my second color, I'm using a bright orange, as bright as I could find without going dark orange. So my color is yellowed orange from the Prismacolor set. And as you can see, it's quite spectacular. It's like tangerine orange, orange. It's carrot top. It's as orange as you can get. That's what you want. Amber is always very clean in color. It has inclusion, so it's not technically a clean gemstone, but it's always very clean in color. You're not going to find muddy amber. You're not going to find something with gray in it or with blue in it. It will always be honey, like pure, clean, amazing honey, just of different variants. You may have dark honey or light honey, but it's always going to be this beautiful, clean, golden honey. Work with very, very pure colors. Do not use any kind of a gray or a black for your shadows and your inclusions. Always we can add a little bit of black on top at the very end if we need to increase the shade of a certain color. Or if, of course, the inclusion itself demands it. For instance, if you have a black ant stuck in there forever and ever, then of course you will need to use black. But don't use black or gray for creating shadows on gemstones. On this, not yet. We'll talk about gradient transitions when we get to shiny gemstones. But for this, for amber, only pure colors. So brown, now orange. Notice that the shading strokes on this are a little bit different. I'm using broader strokes, and again, size-wise, this is how big my amber sample is, which is huge. It's absolutely huge. Like if you have something like this on the coloring page, obviously I made them big so that we have the practice, and so that you have a nice playground to apply all of these pigments to and all of these inclusions to. But in reality, on a coloring page, you may have like a little tiny oval that you will decide to make into amber. You may not even have the space to put in all of these amazing effects. So sometimes, and that's why on the practice page, I give you different sizes and different types of ovals to play with. Also to play with the different level of complexity. Because maybe an amber piece doesn't need to be this complex. Maybe it's as simple as a gradient from yellow through orange to brown as just this rounded stone. That's perfectly fine. But of course, this is a course on gemstones, so I want to wow you guys. I want to show you the most complicated possible versions of these stones that are showpieces. Did you blend with a Q-tip? I do bring in a Q-tip on this one. How do I decide when to bring in a Q-tip? Usually it just depends on the paper that I'm using and the pencils that I'm using. This cream paper is very friendly with Q-tip blending. The white paper that I use, nothing happens. It just takes in the pigment and there's nothing powdery left on the top for me to blend. On this very particular Strathmore cream that I've been playing with, that I love, Q-tip blending works really well, especially on the original layer when I did brown, and it worked out very well. It just makes it a little bit smoother. If you use your Q-tip and nothing happens, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. As long as your shading is smooth and you're applying layer after layer after layer in order. So there's a lot of room for variation here. Of course, you guys can change around all the inclusions and stuff, but the order should be the same. Start with brown, proceed with orange, Proceed with yellow. Now I'm adding this Tuscan red, which is like a burgundy color, to increase the depth of that honey, of that deep dark honey. You definitely want to keep your pencils sharp for something like this, especially the smaller you get. The smaller you get, the harder it is to get all that detail inside of that gemstone. Unfortunately, the way that gemstones are presented in coloring pages is that most of the time they're really tiny. So quite often you won't even get a chance to apply all of this amazing skill that you learned to a typical coloring page. However, there are a lot of coloring pages out there by various artists that feature larger stones, where the stones themselves are the point of interest. David says, it looks like the strokes don't have to be as smooth circular for amber. Exactly, not as smooth and circular as for opal, since there are inclusions and it's sap. Yes, that's exactly it. It's a slightly different kind of a gradient. And if we look at them together with opals, we had these tiny little inclusions, and everything kind of looked like confetti, or like a jawbreaker candy, you know, where you have all of these little artifacts just in there. Whereas this guy, the amber, is a lot smoother, and it's more like a liquid. I mean, it was a liquid at one point. It was very thick honey-like liquid that poured into a certain shape and was later polished by a human being, by a machine, or by hand. Understanding how to practice on something like this, when you come across a coloring page with a big glistening lollipop, you'll be able to treat it as a gemstone or a piece of amber and color it that way, just with different colors that apply to it. So yeah, start thinking about it in those terms, like, where else can I apply this effect? What makes amber look so delicious? And to me, it's this gradient between really deep brown burgundy kind of a thing, almost going into black, and then transitioning through orange, very deep orange, into a little bit of yellow and into white. For highlights, I'm actually starting with black. Or whatever black you like, you can work with that. So again, without white highlights, whatever works best for you. I'm still working with my little Copic nail polish. That's what I call it. And it's quite good. The thing that I like about it is that it's very purely saturated. So I'm getting pure white. So that's exactly what I want. This is now the reflection on the stone itself. This amber is very highly polished. So these white highlights are not the translucency, but rather the actual highlights, reflections of natural light or studio lighting on your actual surface of the amber. What I don't like is what you just saw. There's a drop that forms on the tip. You know, when you have like actual nail polish and you take it out, and you kind of, before you apply the nail polish to your nails, you kind of like scrape it on the side like this so there isn't a drip. Anyone who uses nail polish knows what I'm talking about. Notice there are only 2 or 3 little white highlights on this. Don't overdo it with the highlights on this one. With opal, it was very different. We had a lot of white inclusions on the opal, which are inside the stone. We have the arc on the side, but inside we have a lot of these bursts of iridescence, and that's what the little white inclusions are. Here we don't have anything white inside the amber. We only have little white highlights on the top, on the surface, so don't overdo it. And honestly, I would go with a gel pen. This thing is cool, the white nail polish thing, but it's too much of a headache. I promise it works. Don't be intimidated. You can create all of these wonderful effects. This is from the mouth of my students, you guys. I'm not making it up. Practice a whole bunch and don't get discouraged. Words of wisdom for sure. Push through the weird phases. I love it. That might be my favorite one so far. Push through the weird phases. It really works. Take the class. Practice time and reference pictures. Yes, don't make this stuff up. Use your reference pictures. Practice and use different color paper. Yes, I was hoping somebody would say that. Use different color paper. Don't get stuck on white. Look at the reference pictures to help start you, but learn to let go. That's even cooler. I like that a lot, because reference pictures are not just, a lot of people get intimidated when I start talking about reference pictures because they're like, well, don't you want me to be able to